Hi guys, how are we? Let's do it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what it's like to raise a boy in this particular time who does not like your usual stereotypical boy things. So for those of you who do follow our family, you know that we do have an adorable 6-year-old boy who loves all things Elsa, who loves all things princesses, and who loves all things singing and dancing. Currently he has his nails done. He did mine, so yeah. So in my research of trying to figure out a way to nurture my son into loving and accepting all who he is and all the things that he loves, I really struggled to find things on and articles and readings on things that didn't have to do with gender. So essentially this is more about what he loves and kind of combining that nurture and nature love that we want to instill in him. So he is who he is. Whether he chooses to like these things when he's older or decides that he doesn't want to like those things anymore, that does not play a factor in raising him for us at all. So essentially we know that he has loved these particular things that are not intended for boys for quite some time. So since he was like 2 years old, I posted these videos of him playing with like an Elsa doll and all these things, and we've always expressed that he can be whoever he wants to be, and we try our best to make sure that happens. So essentially the biggest thing that we've dealt with though, our struggles in this is the judgment from other people. So I just want to quickly talk about what we found have been our struggles. Now, I talk about struggles because I think it's important to talk about. I think it's important to talk about how we've dealt with it, because we've dealt also with so much positive reinforcement and positive feedback. There's been so many people who have been amazing with Colin, and also his message of just wanting to be himself and loving the things that he loves. And it's so great that other people have just sent so much love to us. That's great. But I think it's important to figure out that this family that we are currently in, our small family is quite small, but this journey was not easy for us. Like I said, when he was 3, we tried to figure out how to help him with it. I didn't really find a lot, so we kind of had to do it ourselves. So the struggles that we have were a big question. Are you raising your son to get bullied? Are you raising him when you send him to kindergarten every single day in an Elsa dress? Are you raising him to be bullied? My answer to that is absolutely not. So a great example is my husband. When I first met my husband, I was thinking, well, I think this is what everybody in Australia looks like. I just had imagined that everybody was like tan and blonde and active and had a very strong country Australian accent. So obviously I know that that's not it. That was like quite the assumption of mine. But he was captain of his rugby team. He was in the band playing bagpipes. He was a grade A student. He was very good looking and tall and fit and blue eyes, dark hair, all those things. So do you think he was bullied in school? Absolutely. Kids just find whatever they want to bully you with. So my mentality is, why would I risk him thinking that I don't appreciate or don't love or don't admire who he is because of some kid who's gonna bully him anyways? So that's the thing. Kids are gonna bully you anyways. I want Colin knowing that I loved him for who he was and who he dresses like and who he admires regardless. And I want him knowing that when he's older, from the beginning, we supported everything he did. So just keep in mind that you're not raising your child to be bullied. You're not raising your child to get made fun of. You are merely raising your child in an environment where some people can be judgmental, and hopefully when you send them out in that dress, or if you have a girl, if you send them out in that Batman outfit, that you also instill in them the love for themselves, the knowing that this is who they are, and if somebody makes fun of them, it is what it is. Hopefully you're giving them the tools to know how to deal with that. So I'm talking about other kids. So if my husband, so right now it's just 3 of us, but let's just say for this story that I were to also have a daughter. So my husband going to Bunnings, or for those back home in America, Home Depot, in an Elsa dress. So if he were to take my son in an Elsa dress into Bunnings, it would be a very different situation than me taking my daughter in a Superman dress into the grocery store. Now, all this is very gendered the way I just said it. I could have been going to Bunnings and he could have been going to the grocery store, but you get what I'm saying. So both of those reactions that we would get would be very different. Right now in this current state, and I'm a feminist, so I believe that everybody should be treated equally, men and women. So I think both of those should be getting positive reactions because they are very different than what's expected of them. They're trying to break the mold of what's been put societally in front of them and possibly through their families. I think it's brave for a little girl to go out there dressed as Batman. I think it's brave for a little boy to go out there like Elsa. But the environment that we're in right now, I think it's very naive to think that just because we're in an open environment and that we are in the bit more open world of RuPaul's and open world of you have an amazing LGBTQ community, it's very naive to think that judgment isn't there. The only difference is that it is a bit more micro these days. It's a bit more under your breath and it's a bit more passive aggressive when it comes to children. So that's just my personal experience. So what I'm trying to say is I have a lot of friends who didn't come out until they're about 40, 20 years old. So that would have been that they were coming out or they had their teenage years in the 80s and the 90s. So essentially, back then, it would have been very common for somebody to come up to you and for somebody to yell at you to your face and say what they honestly felt like about you loving things that were not for your gender according to society. So now, if somebody were to come up to you and say things like that, they would get blasted all over social media, they would get blasted all over the news, you would just be a bigot, right? So a lot of people don't do that these days, but pay attention to the micro actions, okay? So these small micro actions are really important to figure out how to take care of as well. So when you're when you're just walking around with your kid in an Elsa dress, I'm just gonna go by my experience. I've walked with Colin many times down the street and people have told me, what are you doing? Or people have, under their breath, talked to themselves and said, what a shame. Yeah, adults have said that to me. Crazy. I've also walked into a McDonald's and I've said, oh, can I get a toy? And they said, which one, the boy or the girl toy? I've gotten a sticker from a teacher and she says, which one, the boy or the girl sticker? So there are so many ingrained, stereotypical actions these days that people are doing that they're not even aware of, that they don't mean any harm, but if you find yourself in that situation with your child, you have to learn how to handle that because their mirror neurons are going to copy everything you say and they're going to handle that in the same way when they're in school and someone tells them, that's not for you, that's for girls, that's not for you, that's for boys. And so when you go to McDonald's and they say a boy or girl toy, don't just be like, oh, a boy toy. No, just be like, oh, there's no difference, but I'll take whichever one you think is right. Or when somebody gives me a sticker and they say boy or girl and I'm in front of Colin, I say, oh, there's no difference. So Colin, which one would you like? You can pick anyone. It doesn't have to be a boy or a girl. It could be anyone. There's no difference. So the way that we handle the situations are really important to our children because, again, their mirror neurons are going off the wall during this time from ages 1 to 7. Everything that you are doing right now as an adult in your subconscious mind is learned from 1 to 7 years old. So the way that you know, I'm going to go out the door, I'm going to grab my keys, I'm going to leave, I'm going to go, and then I'm going to go to the store. That's you subconsciously. The way you grab your keys, the way you put on your shoes, the way that you put on your glasses, the way that you think as you're the way that you're walking, the way everything is taught at such an early age. So their mirror neurons right now are trying to learn and retain as much information as possible. So it's important for us to teach them this kind of information, not just in the actions that they're going to get with somebody physically coming up to them and saying, I don't like you, but teaching them how to handle these micro actions so that they understand that micro actions are just as scary, are just as intimidating, are just as hurtful as somebody coming up to you and telling you that they don't like you. So a good example would be, let's say somebody tells you, I'm really mad at my friend, I'm really mad at my husband, I'm really mad at my sister, but they can't tell you just why. And they said, oh, so many little things. That's what a micro action is. So micro action is over these small little actions that someone's making passively or on purpose sometimes, and a little bit more in your face. But most of the time, they're little small actions that they're doing that every single time they're doing it, it's chipping at your heart. Every single time they're doing it, it's chipping at your self-confidence. And every single time they're doing it, you lose yourself a little bit more. And you start to believe that what they're saying is right. So these micro actions for children are equally just as important, because when, let's say you go to the store and somebody says, oh, do you want this boy one or girl one? And you give in and you go, oh, I'll just get the boy one. And let's say you do that 5 times and you're not purposely trying to hurt his feelings. You're not purposely trying to do any of that. But for them, it's been 5 times that you've said, oh, this is for boys. This is for boys. You have to wear this. You have to think like this. So just be careful of those micro expressions, because they're copying every single move. And it did work for us in the long run, because Colin had won this prize at school where he got to go into a box and pick, and the teacher had like these boy ones and these girl ones. And I knew that, you know, when you're buying these things for these kids, most of the time, even if you don't know any better, or even if you're not quite sure, you think, oh, the boys are probably like this Spider-Man one and the girls are probably like this princess one. And he picked princess ring. And I was like, yes, exactly. It doesn't matter. Now, if he would have picked a Spider-Man ring, that would have been just as fine. So this is the whole point. It doesn't matter whether he decides to dress up as Batman one day. It doesn't matter whether he decides to dress up as Elsa one day. Regardless of what it is, we are choosing to love him and his choices every day. And there are some times where it's really difficult, to where he will come home from school and say, the boys made fun of my Elsa backpack, or my boys made fun of my Elsa lunchbox, and I don't want to take it anymore. And that's where, regardless of what I say to him, those instances will always be at school. Those instances will always be when he's older. So regardless of what it is, try to, as much as you can, to instill just some confidence in them in the beginning. A really good exercise that I do, that you could do now while you're self-isolating, is an identity exercise. So essentially you put their name on a blackboard or a piece of paper, whatever it is, and they have to write down all of the things that they are. I am kind, I am nice, I am a son, I am a brother, I am sweet, I am thoughtful, I'm grateful, and have them give examples of each one. And if you do this exercise with them once a week, they start to find different things that they are. So I'm not just a boy who loves Elsa. I'm also kind. I'm also grateful. I'm also intelligent. I'm also curious. And so they start to see that this part of them is just as important as being kind. This part of them of loving things that are not necessarily made for them, or that society says that they shouldn't like. Even in this open world, it is definitely out there, the judgment, that it's okay. And that's just as important as being kind and being curious and being intelligent and being grateful and being a good listener. It's just as important. So that's a good exercise that you can definitely do. And also keep in mind to surround your children with people that love them for who they are all the time. So like I said before, those mirror neurons are really important. If you choose to support your children for who they love, or for what they wear, or for who they admire, hopefully the goal is that will teach other children like them, and then that will empower other people around them to do the same. So an incident that we just had was where a little girl came up to Colin and she goes, I just watched the new Dora movie and you reminded me of Dora. And he was like, why? She goes, because Dora was dancing, nobody else was dancing, but she didn't care if anyone else is dancing. She was just having a really good time, and that reminded me of you because you wore a witch outfit to Halloween and your dad dressed up as Elsa and you didn't care what everybody thought. And I was just like, exactly. That is why it is so important, because you're not just doing this for yourself. You're not just doing this for your son or your daughter. You're doing this for other kids and the people around them, and showing them that it's completely okay to love the things that you love. It is completely okay to be who you are. And hopefully, whether it's a world that's not inviting to that, or whether it's a world that's super open to that, they have the tools to essentially know how to love themselves and know how to accept themselves. And I hope this has helped. I have gotten a lot of questions about what to do. about their little boys who, you know, are just so special, and just like little girls that are so special that don't necessarily love the things that society wants them to love. So I'll be doing more on this, but in the meantime, hopefully that helped a little bit. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, guys.